Good morning. Welcome to the first legislative forum in a series of 3 being sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Johnson County during the 2022 Iowa legislative session. My name is Eliza Willis. I'm a member of the League of Women Voters of Johnson County. Our timekeeper today is Deanne Meir, also a League member. The League is dedicated to educating voters on political and ballot issues. We encourage informed citizen participation in government. Membership in the League of Women Voters of Johnson County is open to anyone 16 years of age and older. Please join us. We can use your time, your talent, and your financial support for our ongoing operations. Government serves best when it's open and transparent. Democracy works best when more people are involved. To learn more, speak to one of our members or reach out to us through our website or Facebook page. These forums are designed to give local citizens an opportunity to discuss current state legislative issues with their elected officials while the legislative session is underway. All legislators from Johnson County were invited to participate. Today's forum focuses on issues related to education. Co-sponsors for today are the Iowa City School District, Iowa City Education Association, American Association of University Professors, University of Iowa Public Policy Center's Social and Education Research Program, and the Grant Wood Area Education Agency. I'd like to introduce our legislators who are with us today. First, the senators. Joe Bolcom, representing District 43, Kevin Kinney for District 39, Zach Walls for District 37. And our representatives who are with us today are Mary Masher for District 86, David Jacoby for District 74, Amy Nielsen for District 77, and Christina Bowen for District 85. We will start the forum with 3-minute summaries from each of our legislators on recent legislative matters of interest to them individually, starting with Senator Bolcom representing District 43.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's great to be here. I want to especially thank the League for your continued efforts to inform Iowans about these important public policy matters, and also all the educators on the call today that are co-sponsoring. I want to take a moment, though, before I make a couple comments about the start of the session, to recognize the Dean of the Johnson County delegation, Representative Masher, who, as we talk about education today, there's been no one as a stronger advocate for public education, for our kids, for early childhood education, for mental health for our children. And Mary has respect from people on both sides of the aisle. She's been a tireless fighter for public education. And as she's not seeking re-election this year, I just want to take this moment and thank her. I know many on this call recognize her contributions, but we're going to miss her greatly. Let me also start by apologizing for the remarks that were made by Senator Chapman and reinforced by Governor Reynolds in her condition of the state, in kind of the disrespect that we've seen for public education and for the people that lead it, our teachers and the people that support our teachers in public education. It was disturbing to hear the comments within like the first 5 minutes of the start of the legislative session, the Senate president questioning the motives of teachers in the classroom, and it blew us away. Actually, it was the most divisive opening day speech I've heard in 24 years, in sitting through those speeches. So I just want to apologize for them. I think our delegation recognizes the incredible contribution and really the difficult time that teachers and everybody associated with our public schools has had over these last 2 years in managing through the pandemic. So I just want to say that we know what you do. We respect it and want to be your partners in strengthening what you do in your workplace. And we've had a little challenge the first couple of weeks. We've had a bit of a COVID outbreak in our Senate caucus. We've had 3 members that have tested positive about a week ago, and so we've had kind of a light start to the session. This last week was short because of the King holiday. The thing that's gotten the most news is the governor's proposed flat tax, which we can talk about as we get into this. She also threw out a number on local school funding that we think is inadequate. So there's a lot of work to do this session. Again, appreciate the forum this morning and being with you, and look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Next is Senator Kevin Kinney for District 39.
Thank you. Having a lot of technical difficulties out here today. My internet went out, so I'm going off my phone. We opened up, as Senator Balcom said, with a very divisive first speech in the Senate with Senator Chapman, basically disrespecting our educators, I felt. And it's going to be a long session. One of the things that I was also surprised to see, or maybe not so surprised, that the governor in her budget package has turned and looking at bringing on vouchers. And I think that is a mistake, especially being on a school board for 9 years before going into the legislature. I find that wrong, I guess, the wrong way to go. There's a lot of things that I've been working on. I chair I'm the ranking member on the Judiciary Committee, the ranking member of Ag. I'm on ethics, and then I'm on the Ag and Natural Resource Budget sub. One of the things that I've been working on this fall is a beef labeling or made in Iowa label. I've been working with Senator Sweeney on this, and being on the Ag Committee, we're finding that there's 4 companies in the state of Iowa or in the United States that are these packing houses that are controlling the markets for beef, and it's not only in beef, but it is in pork and chicken, turkey also. One of the nice things, though, that I've seen are Secretary Vilsack came out about 2 weeks ago with President Biden on the stockers and packers, looking at how some of these companies have merged together to become these super companies, and hopefully they can get to the bottom of that, and we can break up some of these very large companies and get back to more of a free market. I look forward to hearing from everybody and your opinions and views and stuff.
Next is Senator Zach Walls for District 37.
Good morning, everybody. Senator Zach Walls, have the pleasure of representing Coralville, Iowa City, Solon, some rural Johnson County, all of Cedar County, and down to Walton and Muscatine County. Following the redistricting process, my district will be shrinking pretty considerably, and I'll be losing the Cedar and Muscatine County portions of my district and picking up North Liberty. I like North Liberty a lot, so I'm excited about that. And I look forward to having Representative Nielsen as one of my 2 reps rather than Representative is Bobby with us this morning. It'll be nice to have everybody on the same team. So really looking forward to getting to know folks in North Liberty a little bit better, and to continuing to work with the league and others to get the word out about what's going on in Des Moines. As Joe alluded to, I was one of the members of our caucus who tested positive for COVID-19 last weekend. So I have not been at the Capitol this week. I've been working from home and trying to stay on top of things while continuing to rest and get better. Good news is that I'm feeling a heck of a lot better than I did last Saturday. And I'm looking forward to cheering on the Packers tonight in the playoffs. But look forward to getting back to Des Moines next week to continue working for the folks of Senate District 37. As Joe's already talked about, and Kevin also mentioned, we know that we're going to see a lot of education related bills this year. One of the things that we should probably stress is that even though the governor has her own proposal, the Republicans in the Senate and the Republicans in the House and the governor all have different visions and different ideas for what they want to do. And so I don't think that any of these initial proposals that we've seen are really indicative of where exactly things are going to wind up. And that's both good news and bad news, because things could either improve or potentially get substantially worse. Last year in 2021 was the first time that we'd ever seen a vouchers bill actually advance through a full legislative chamber. And so we're really concerned about the direction and the momentum, frankly, that that proposal has in our area. We also know that the governor has essentially agreed with Democrats that one of the biggest challenges facing our state is the workforce crisis that we're seeing. And this takes a few different examples. It means that you have employers who can't find enough employees to fill open positions. It means that there are kids who can't get to school because some districts don't have enough bus drivers. It means that there are people who are working in these jobs who still aren't able to get the pay and benefits that they need to take care of folks back at home. So we know that there are a lot of challenges in the economy right now. Democrats have a very different idea about how to solve those workforce issues. We think one of the biggest challenges is that Republicans have led our state in a direction that makes it harder to recruit and retain new talent to the state of Iowa, or to keep Iowans here who might be looking at job prospects elsewhere. We think that the solution to that is to stop pouring gasoline on the culture war and start actually investing in quality of life in our state. It sounds obvious when you say it out loud, but believe it or not, that's a contentious assertion at the State House. So I'll wrap up here and looking forward to the discussion and conversation this morning.
Next, we'll hear from Representative Mary Masher for District 86.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you again to the League. We do appreciate it. Eliza, thanks for being our moderator this morning. We appreciate you as well. And Joe, thanks for the kind comments. I appreciate them greatly, and have just been really proud to have been a part of this delegation for 28 years and advocating for the things that the people in Iowa City and our community care about. And education is one of those top issues. The sponsors today, I'm so glad you're on, because I'm hoping for a nice, good discussion about some of the things that are really going to happen, and then other things that are out there that are causing problems for all of us. The teacher shortage is one of those issues, and obviously we're concerned about who's going to want to teach in Iowa if we have all of these pieces of legislation that really and truly are an assault or an attack on teachers and the profession. It makes it really difficult for people to want to go into a career that is being politicized, and they're seeing attacks like Senator Chapman's. I know that many of the House members in education, including our Republican colleagues, have taken some of Senator Chapman's comments on and do not agree with them. So Dustin Hite, who is one of the state representatives in Iowa on the Republican side, he is the chair of our education committee. His wife is a librarian, a public school librarian. So he is not on the same page as some of the comments and some of the bills that are coming through. We've got issues regarding our supplemental state aid in terms of how much is going to be offered to schools for their general funds. The governor has recommended 2.5%. That is extremely inadequate in terms of the needs of our districts and just the cost of living issues that they're dealing with. So we obviously have a great deal to do in that regard. In terms of censorship and curriculum, obviously there's been this push on the part of a number of parents to challenge books that are in our libraries. Librarians do a wonderful job in our state in selecting materials that are appropriate for the students that are in our schools, and I trust them. I trust them to make the good decisions in terms of making sure that materials are appropriate. I also know that we have policies in place to be able to challenge books. Those policies are there in every single school district, and everyone has the right to do that. We just need to make sure parents are aware of what those policies are and know what the mechanisms are for them to be able to do that. COVID is a concern up there. We do not have people wearing masks, and there are many of our colleagues in the legislature who are unvaccinated. So the spread has been a concern, and obviously we're doing everything we can to keep people safe. But as much as we try to do that, it's very difficult when people do not follow simple protocols. So thanks again, and I'm looking forward to the questions.
Next, we'll hear from Representative David Jacoby from District 74.
Thank you. And thank you to the League for having the forum. And thank you to the League for the voting rights event that you had Wednesday at the state capitol. It was got quite the notice from many people walking through. I do want to go on record that I have not accepted the retirement applications from either Joe or Mary. So I'm still going through the process of grief, but we're going to be missing two stalwarts in the state legislature that have fought for education for years. Personally, what I've been working on the first 2 weeks is Medicaid reimbursement. Because whenever we're looking at talking about kids in school, when we're talking about mental health and we're talking about health overall, until we correct the wrong way path for Medicaid, and until we actually raise the Medicaid reimbursement rates, we're just going to be spitting in the wind on a lot of the initiatives that the governor's proposing. As far as, and Mary touched on it, as far as books and restrictions and violating the First Amendment, I did file a right to read constitutional amendment in the State House. It has very little chance of progressing, but I'm hoping it at least sends a message that we actually believe in the First Amendment. And I'll make an apology for not having unconditional positive regard. I think the person making comments about teachers and staff and public schools and in relation to being sinister, I think he's an idiot. But oops, we're recording this, aren't we? Well, then he can use it in his own campaign election, because I think when you step out like that and say that about people who've been working their tail off, especially in the last 2.5 years of COVID, I think it was totally off base. And we do have some Republicans pushing back on that comment, but it is just a heck of a way to start the session. But thank you for the forum, and I really look forward to the discussion today.
Next is Representative Amy Nielsen for District 77.
Morning, everybody. I'd like to second the fact that I also have not accepted Joe and Mary's applications for retirement. We're a huge loss, and they will be missed, and the work that they get done at the state capitol is really unparalleled. And they will leave a big hole to be filled, probably by multiple people. I again want to thank the League for hosting these and for the great event that you did on Wednesday at the Capitol. I also just want to give my thanks and my admiration to all of the teachers out there who have basically been putting their lives on the line to teach our children over the last couple of years. You don't deserve what is being said, and I think that that first week of session was probably just a bundle of insults to y'all, and more than just what Senator Chapman had to say. So please know that he does not have the monopoly on that opinion. Most of us think that teachers do amazing things and have nothing but the best intentions for our children. As far as things that I'm working on, I'm just seeing that there's a huge push to basically take something that works really well and is established and just muck it up as much as they can. Whether it's the books and curriculum that's in schools where we already have systems in place. Parents want to say something or make a challenge, down to stormwater management. The Republicans seem to want to get in and just, get their fingerprints on everything, and in a lot of places that they don't belong. So that's basically my first couple week wrap up, and look forward to hearing what the people on the ground are seeing and thinking. So thanks for having me.
Next is Representative Christina Bowen for District 85.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. It's great to be here. Good to see everybody. So just a couple things. First, I want to say about Representative Masher and Senator Bolcom, Joe and Mary. Not only have they been tremendous advocates for the Johnson County area and Iowa City at the State House, but they have been amazing mentors to me personally, and have really helped me begin at the State House. They've really been tremendous. And so I just want to thank them personally, as well as, for the district and for the people of Iowa City. And then, on this education, it's hard for me in some ways to get my head around some of the comments that the Republicans are making. For me, I owe my life to public educators and to public school. Neither of my parents graduated high school, and for me to be able to go on and go to engineering school and then law school, that was all because of public school teachers. They helped me prepare to be ready to go. They helped me to apply to college. Literally sat me down and helped me do that because my parents didn't have any idea how to do that. Helped me to apply for scholarships and other things like that. I am so, personally grateful to public educators, and then, to see what they have done during these last couple of years during COVID. We have talked a lot about healthcare workers, and rightly so. They have been on the front lines of COVID, but boy, our teachers have been right there too. And not only have they been right there, exposed, to this every day and having to really, take their lives in their hands to go to work, but then to deal with all of the political backlash around masks in schools and, all of that. I think that they've had a tough time, and I absolutely see why some of them are choosing not to enter the profession, or current people are choosing to leave the profession. And that is sad for all of us, because, I've been talking to a lot of people around Iowa who are saying that they are one or two teachers short of having to close the school. Like if they lose one or more teachers very soon, they are going to have to shut down the school. And our kids and our whole communities are going to suffer from that. So I just want to echo everything everybody said about the comments and the attitudes toward public schools and teachers, and say that we, on this call, I have no doubt that every single one of us will fight as hard as we can to protect our teachers, to protect our schools, and ultimately protect our kids, because that's who's hurting here. And so absolutely, we will do everything that we can this session. I think we are going to see, as some people have already alluded to, I won't say anything that other people have said, but we will see more of the state government, on both sides. We're going to see the state trying to pass bills to prevent people in the state from having to comply with federal laws. We're already seeing that on the gun side. We're seeing it with regard to executive orders. We're seeing bills introduced that would, take the state kind of out of the federal system. They kind of just want to not have to deal with federal requirements or federal laws. And then on the flip side, as Representative Nielsen mentioned, we're going to see the state trying to prevent local governments from regulating things within their own local borders. And so we saw that last time. There was a natural gas bill that was just a bad bill. And then it was just so broad. Stormwater of all things, really, we're not going to have people regulating stormwater. We just want it to flow everywhere and pile up and run onto neighbors' yards and muck up things and, create unsafe drinking water conditions. It's just, these things really just make no sense at all. The final thing I'll say is I am excited. I'm working on a couple of bipartisan bills. One is to do with medical release for people in prisons who are terminally ill. Iowa is the only state that does not have a law allowing a process for that. There's a lot of bipartisan support for that. So I'm working really hard on crafting that bill. And then the other one is a bipartisan elder abuse prevention bill that is a comprehensive bill to deal with physical, emotional, and financial abuse of our elder Iowans. So also has broad bipartisan support, and I'm working on those as we speak. So I'll stop there and look forward to the conversation. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all for your updates on legislative issues. At this time, we will begin questions, starting with one from the league and one from each co-sponsor, followed by questions from members of the audience. We remind all participants that questions are limited to 1 minute. Please observe this time limit so that the legislators can address as many questions as possible. Legislators, please limit your responses to 2 minutes. All legislators are welcome to join in responding to each question. So let me begin with the league's question. Staffing shortages in all positions in our schools are clearly going to be a significant challenge to Iowa schools, not only in 2022. The governor, in the condition of the state on January 11th, presented an educator apprenticeship initiative. What short and long-term solutions do you recommend that the legislature consider to ensure that the schools are fully staffed by qualified individuals?
I'll gladly start. Obviously, we are concerned about the teacher shortage, our paraeducator shortage. We've even had bus driver shortages across the state, and some schools have closed down because they didn't have enough bus drivers to get the kids to school and have canceled classes for that day. One of the things that the governor is proposing, and I think all of us support, is increasing that pipeline of people that are going into education. And there are some efforts that she had in her State of the State address that would look at juniors and seniors in high school and being able to get them into the pipeline earlier. There are some states that do pay student teachers for subbing. And that is something that I didn't think people, I didn't realize that in Iowa, we are able to pay student teachers for 1 day a week of subbing. And that is allowed by law, even though they don't have their 4-year degree at this point. Other states do that more often in terms of they allow them to sub and they are paid during their student teaching. And so that is something that we're also talking about, increasing the practicum so it's more rigorous, and then allowing those individuals who are student teaching to be paid during that student teaching. And so those are some things that we have been looking at. We're working with Republican legislators in the House to do that. They are also looking at how we can increase that pipeline and making sure that we get a number of minorities who are also interested in going into the field of education, whether they're paraeducators that are going through that process of becoming licensed teachers, or people, again, in high school who are interested in getting in the teaching profession. So there are some real efforts, and I think there will be some good things that come out of that this session.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
This is Sarah
Just kind
Bolton. Go ahead, Amy.
Okay.
You sure? Okay. I'll just echo a little bit of what Mary said. And because I have a student teacher living in my house this semester, I'm becoming very familiar with how that process is working. And I really think that we all understand what the problem is, but we all don't agree on the best solutions. I don't really feel comfortable with this student apprenticeship program as far as what I know about it right now. It just seems like maybe it's lowering standards once again, which I think we've done way too often. I think the paying the student teachers while they're teaching, or at the very least forgiving their tuition for that semester, is a great place for us to start, to help students, want to continue being in the education program and then going out to the schools. And I just think that we need to start respecting the profession. statewide, I just don't think that the respect that you guys deserve is there. And then you can see it in all of the, whether they're going to go anywhere or not. The damaging bills, the culture war bills that are being introduced are very much damaging Iowa. So that's it. I'm going to let Joe take over now.
Well, thanks. I think our educators, our local school boards know what they're doing. And I think the state, what our responsibility is to provide the resources to local districts to educate our kids. And we just haven't done it. We have a $2 billion surplus. We have revenues are strong, and the governor's proposing a 1.75% increase in local school support for the coming year. That's less than, again, another funding level less than the rate of inflation. And I think the way we're going to strengthen the workforce in our local schools is to give them the resources they need to do their jobs, and also to have adequate staff across all the needs they have. And that's the state support. The other is just to cool the culture war stuff. The headlines around the micromanagement of the lesson plans and library shelves is just going to send people away from this profession. And so I think those two things, getting back on track with an adequate funding and dealing with this culture war stuff. I'm concerned, though, that over the last 12 years, we've not stayed up with the cost of inflation. Even in thin years, we haven't done it. And now we've got all sorts of resources as a result of all this federal money coming in. The governor's recent initiative she announced is all with federal money. She's not spending any state money, even the $1,000 bonuses. That's all federal money. So we need to do our part as a state to fund our public schools.
Would anyone else like to respond?
Oh, I'll jump in. This is Christina. Oh, Dave, you go ahead.
Go ahead, Christina.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I'll just say a couple things. I agree, with Joe about deferring to local school boards. Not every school in Iowa is the same. And that's never been truer than in the pandemic. And so, letting school boards do what they do, and us providing funding is the right way to go for the most part. One thing on the funding, I just wanted to point out, because Joe said that the governor's proposing a 1.75 increase, and I think Mary had said 2.5, and they're both right. Because what's happening is that the nominal amount, and this is important for us to know when we're talking about these, the nominal amount that the governor's proposing is 2.5%, but there's some significant things that are being backed out of that actually aren't going to end up going to the schools. And so as a result, the actual amount that the schools will see is more like 1.75%, which I think comes to 63 million or something like that. So I think, the funding is complicated with schools. And so I think it's really important for us to know exactly what at the end of the day, the schools and teachers and kids are actually getting, because it isn't as much sometimes as what they would kind of say ostensibly. So the other thing, I totally agree about the respect piece, and I think it's important to know that a lot of this is just posturing. It really is just politicizing the schools for political reasons, for the sake of posturing, because there are already laws in place for that punish people from giving obscene materials to kids. That's a thing. Okay, that's already in the law. We don't need a special law to do this to teachers. It's ridiculous. And there's a process. If there's something in a library that maybe shouldn't be there, and there are a lot of books in libraries, so maybe there are a couple things that are a little questionable. Look, if that happens, then there's a process, as I think Representative Masher said, to deal with that. All of these new laws, new felonies, it's a lot of it's just politicizing and posturing, and it's really sad. But it has an effect. Even if it doesn't become a new law, it has its effect because it is demoralizing to teachers. And even if we pay them more, and the governor's suggesting this $1,000 bonus, well, that's all very nice to give $1,000 bonus. But look, $1,000 is not going to be enough to encourage teachers to continue to go to work when they have to walk on eggshells all the time, wondering what they can say, what they don't say, when a teacher, one teacher's complaint is going to result in, a huge backlash from the legislature and getting hauled into the government oversight committee or the education committee or something else for a public spectacle. I mean, all of that is really, really discouraging. And, we have smart teachers, they have choices. And they're not going to come to schools.
Excuse me. We probably need to let Representative Jacoby comment.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes,
we've got a lot of people asking questions. So
yeah, sorry.
You.
Go ahead, please.
Okay.
Please.
Thank you. Just briefly on the school staffing, I'm also thinking about school bus drivers, your HVAC operators, your day-to-day maintenance. And there's one thing I'm very proud of, and that's the system we have locally with our public school districts and Kirkwood Community College and the University of Iowa. We have the regional center in Coralville at Oakdale that's training our young people, sophomores, juniors, and seniors in high school to get college credit. They can be in the HVAC system, they can be in machinery, they can be pre-teachers. That is something we're doing locally. It's not new, but it's very exciting. We are the only area that has a partnership with the school districts, community college, and a Regent University as of today. And I think that is what we need to keep moving forward on. The key thing is the pipeline as we're training young people and they're making career choices, is that we keep that pipeline in Iowa. And that's where my concern is we're giving these young students experience. Let's also give them a positive experience in Iowa.
Thank you. Anyone else like to answer this question, or should we move on?
The only thing I want to say is in my Senate district, it's very diverse. What happens in Iowa City may not be happening in Keota or Tri-County and some of my very small schools in Keokuk County. And we're taking a lot of the local control and trying to make a blanket policy in which it may work in one area, but it does not work well in the other. I think we need to go back to some more local control for our school boards and so forth.
I'll add one just quick thing in addition to that. Like Kevin, I've got several school districts that are much smaller and more rural. But one of the concerns that superintendents and administrators have in those communities is that if we continue to drive out teachers from our more urban school districts and suburban areas, when you have folks see those jobs open up and you're in a more rural district, a lot of folks are going to take a closer look at moving into a more urban district or a more rural district or a more suburban district. And so this idea that somehow it's urban school teachers who are the problem, who are brainwashing our kids. So if we get rid of all of them, that's great, which is this view that Republicans have. They're not thinking very far down the line, because the immediate talent pool to fill those jobs that open up are going to be from rural districts that are right here in Iowa. And I don't know, Brady or others, if you've probably got some colleagues who have come to ICCSD from rural school districts here in our state. I think that there are just a lot of Republican lawmakers who have not fully thought through the consequences of taking this very antagonistic relationship to teachers who are in more urban and suburban community school districts.
Okay, thank you. We'll now turn to questions from the co-sponsors. The first one from the Iowa City Community School District, Kim Colvin, representing that. Is Kim Colvin?
She's not on, no.
Okay, well then let's move on to the Iowa City Education Association and Brady Schutt.
Hi, thanks everybody. I'm Brady Schutt. I'm the president of the Iowa City Education Association. I'd like to start off, and Zach, I agree with you. I think just to piggyback off of that, I don't think the domino effect has been really thought through. I'd like to start though by thanking the league for hosting this forum, to thank all of our legislators for all of their tireless advocacy and work on our behalf, and a special thank you to Senator Bolcom and to Representative Masher. It's 52 years of collective experience and advocacy in our system and for us in Johnson County, and they're tremendous, skilled, fierce, tireless legislators, and we can't thank you enough. Mary, serving on the Education Committee, you will be you'll be impossible to replace. So I just want to honor and recognize the work that you've done. We also appreciate all of the comments of support about the divisive concepts and language that have come out of the legislature early this session. It is discouraging, so we appreciate your support. Retention and recruitment is, of course, a major concern for us, and we sort of addressed that. So I'm wondering if we can talk about another area where I feel that we have a good opportunity to work with our Republican friends and rural districts, and that's mental health. It's certainly been a concern of us in the schools always. There's been an increased emphasis on social, emotional, behavioral health of our students and our staff. And I'm wondering if you could talk about some of the initiatives that seem to have some bipartisan support in the legislature right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Who would like to begin responding to that question?
Well, I'll get it started there. Again, I think the key to anything we do as far as mental health, children's or adults, is revamp our Medicaid reimbursement system. And I think that's very important in rural areas as much as it is in urban areas. I agree, there are a handful of very positive initiatives, bills being addressed in the House. Ann Meyer, a Republican from Fort Dodge, has been working on those with a number of our Democrats on the House Human Resources Committee. The problem is we're still a little stuck about who's going to pay for it and how it's going to be paid. So I'm actually excited. I think we're going to get some things done this year, but it's the age-old adage of we love the idea, but who's going to pay for it?
Great.
I can fill in on that too, just a little bit. So the initiatives, when I first heard that the Republicans were going to do something on mental health this year, I was a little skeptical just because, we've seen in years past, particularly with things like childcare and water quality, where these huge looming issues, and they kind of introduce these bills, and they're kind of minimal improvements, but then they kind of declare victory and move on. I think that the mental health bills are real. They're good. They really do some good things, and they are bipartisan, which is great. One of them would create a psychiatric residency program through the University of Iowa, and University of Iowa is very supportive of it. They think it's a good program. So that's good, because one of the problems we have is with staffing. We don't have sufficient psychiatric doctors and staff here in the state. So that'll create a psychiatric residency program. Another would increase the number of beds, psychiatric beds, both adult and child, that we have in the state, because we literally are right now right at the very bottom for the number of psychiatric beds that we have per population. And then another would, as Dave mentioned, would increase the Medicaid reimbursement rate for complex psychiatric care. So there's that. And then there's also a loan repayment program for people who have medication prescribing ability and go out to work in Iowa in underserved areas. So those are all really good things. So these are meaningful. The psychiatric professionals I've talked to are very happy with these. Most of these came from them. People like NAMI advocates and those, they're very happy with these. They feel like, they made these proposals and the Republicans took them. And so I think all of that's good. I think how to pay for them, Dave's absolutely right. That's a big thing, especially as we're starting to talk about this flat tax. Like how does all this stuff get paid for when you're also talking about reducing revenue? So I think that remains to be seen, but I did want to just fill in a little bit on what those proposals actually do.
Thank you.
And I'll jump in. Obviously, Brady, this is an enormous issue. And I met with the Youth Advisory Council for the state of Iowa this year. And those students are so in touch with what is happening in our schools, and they're wonderful advocates, and they've been doing a phenomenal job. But there were a couple of things that they identified. One was more peer counseling programs where they're able to talk to their own friends and folks in school to be able to get mental health treatment, and to be able to identify who they can go to be able to get that support. So I look at some of those kinds of things and realize that the students are wanting and willing to do that, They just need some of the mechanisms in place to be able to allow them to get that kind of skill set and expertise so they can identify depression, kids that might be suicidal, kids that may need help with just stress issues and how to cope with that. The other thing the Youth Advisory Council is doing, they have a legislative agenda, and one of the other agenda items they identified was the Student Activity Fund. Every school district has to have one, but they don't have to put any money into it. Iowa City does, and they devote those dollars to low-income students and students who might not be able to participate in some of the student activities that are available for everybody. And so I look at that again as another way to engage students, give them a niche and a group to be a part of, and again, help them with their mental health issues. And so the last piece is the students also identified they're worried about their teachers. They're seeing the stress of mental health issues with their teachers because of the fact that they're having to take their prep times to be able to teach because they don't have enough subs available. They're doubling up on classes when they don't have enough subs. Those are things that are creating an enormous problem with our teaching population as well. And students are worried about that. So I think kudos to them. They're recognizing some of the problems.
Thank you. Would any?
Yeah, it's Senator Bolcom. Thanks for the question, Brady. I don't think we've seen any specific proposal to support kids in terms of our K-12 system or teachers. Clearly, the pandemic's it's been tough on everybody, and the governor's whole, and we all agreed with this. The best place for kids is in school, right? I mean, nobody argued with that. But now, and for emotional well-being, but they haven't proposed any new resources in light of all that we've learned about both teachers and kids, struggling to get back to normal. They've proposed nothing. And I appreciate that the Republicans have kicked out a series of proposals, but we've seen this play before. A lot of great ideas, but no resources. Their number one priority is cutting taxes this session. Has been the news since the governor spoke on the second day of session. Both the House and Senate Republican caucuses are working on bigger tax cut plans than hers. And if that's your top priority, you're not going to have the resources to support the schools, support mental health, and all the other things that Iowans so need right now.
Thank you. Would any other legislator like to comment on this question? Okay, let's move on to the American Association of University Professors and Lauren Glass.
Hey, everybody. My name's Lauren Glass. I am both the chair of the English department, and also on the faculty council, but I'm here as president of the American Association of University Professors. I want to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum and thank our congressional delegation and share in everyone's sorrow for Mary Masher and Joe Bolcom's upcoming retirement. We don't know what we'll do without them. They've been wonderful advocates for education across the spectrum, right? All the way up to our higher education. We are very concerned at the AAUP about the resurgence of censorship and book banning, which I'm actually a scholar of censorship and obscenity. And, there are some folks who thought this had ended generations ago. But I guess we're particularly concerned or find ourselves noting what appears to be a quite explicit contradiction between the banning of books and the advocating for freedom of speech and freedom of expression. And I'm wondering whether the legislators can speak to whether there's any way to leverage that contradiction to educate our Republican friends about freedom of expression and academic freedom in order to push back against some of this book banning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Lauren, this is Senator Walls. I'm happy to take a quick stab at that. The hypocrisy that you've identified here has not been lost on any of the Democratic lawmakers at the State House, and it has been to no end of the frustration that I think we're all feeling listening, to the folks who were talking about relentless attacks on the First Amendment last year, now literally trying to ban books and yeah, I mean, it's frustrating, but I mean, the key thing, of course, is that they don't see it as a contradiction at all, both because of not an unclear understanding of what exactly the First Amendment is and how it pertains to social media companies. And then, in the Senate in particular, we haven't really talked as much about this yet, but not just banning books, but also banning the press from the floor of the Senate. For 140 years, journalists have had the opportunity to be on the floor of the Iowa Senate and cover, the debates and the dialogue, and to interview senators on the floor. And so for Republicans now to say that because they can't distinguish between a blog and a newspaper, that they're going to ban, I mean, it's the worst pretext you can imagine. And a big thanks to the league and many others who helped try to continue to raise awareness of this issue earlier this week at the State House. And so, we're going to continue to push back on this. In my opening day response to Senator Chapman's speech, I highlighted the Republican attacks on the First Amendment and pointed out the hypocrisy. And believe me, we're going to continue to do that. Unfortunately, I would not hold your breath, Lauren, and I would not expect any reversal of policy here anytime soon. Republicans think this is a winning issue, and so they're going to keep pushing for it.
Thank you. Would anyone else?
Lauren, if I may, I'd like to ask you for help on this issue too. If you see something that's, daily egregious in terms of censorship, please send a note to us, and you can define it better than we can. I will, and since you're part of the English department, you can say it a lot more better than we can, but also, and anything that's a direct contradiction, please help us out. And using one syllable words helps, but if you can, I'm asking for your help on this particular issue.
Lauren, I was just going to comment that one of the things that we're trying to do is formalize some of our policies in terms of how you can challenge books. We believe parents have every right to do that, and there should be a mechanism in place. Most districts do. I don't know that it is standardized across the state, and that's one of the things that we're looking at, is how do we make sure that all districts are doing that fairly and making sure that the policies reflect that. The other is they've also identified that they want to put curriculum online so all parents can see it, and basically we're looking at that with social studies curriculum right now, where they supported a bill the other day that would require the Board of Education at the state level to approve everything taught in social studies. It's ridiculous, right? But at the same time, that's what we're up against. And so we're also looking at, sure, curriculum should be available to parents. They should be able to go into the school building and see what is being taught at any time. So again, formalizing those kinds of things makes sense to us, but not this ability to veto anything that's being taught in the schools. And that's the kind of thing that we're seeing. So there's definitely some movement there and some things that I think we can do that would be positive, but some of that is copyright protected. And so we can't put it online. You know that as a college professor, you cannot allow some of that to be available to the public because of copyright issues. And we're not going to violate federal copyright law to appease some right-wing conservatives. So those are some things just to think about. And thanks again for the question and all you do to advocate for public education. Thanks.
Lauren, I'll just add, oh, sorry, Joe.
No, you go ahead, Christina.
I'm going to be really quick. I was just going to say, Lauren, I totally agree. You and I have talked about this at length. I wrote an op-ed last session exactly on this point, pointing out, the hypocrisy and how they were saying that universities were violating free speech rights, but now they're kind of doing the same thing with some of these bills that were introduced. We'll continue to do that. I think Zach's right that they just don't see a conflict because they keep pointing out that the things that they're trying to prohibit or regulate are things that aren't protected speech, right? That they're, giving obscenity to children, or they're, whatever. And of course that they want to be able to define that for themselves. The Republicans want to be able to define what speech is and what's protected and what's not protected. And I think that's really the problem. And so, you know, public awareness, educating the public on what's going on, pointing out how, you know, if you take some of the things that they're proposing to their logical conclusion, then we won't be able to teach things like To Kill a Mockingbird and, you know, other kind of classic things. I think pointing out and making that real to people, and exactly what we're talking about potentially banning, you know, I think that that's important.
Thank you. Senator Bolcom?
Yeah, thanks. I think the other thing to know here is that, you know, we've had a bunch of parents that have been promoted by Republicans around anti-vaccination, around anti-mask wearing, that have shown up at school board meetings across the state, and central Iowa has been a hotbed for this, but it's been inflamed. Those parents have been inflamed by Republicans who have sided with them on this anti-vax, anti-mask, anti-safety issue. And it's really, frankly, morphed now into some of those same parents engaged in the conversation about what's on the library shelves in their schools. So the Republicans really cynically, I think, see this as like political energy they're going to use in elections this coming fall. And I say to the people on the other side, all the folks that have a different view, we have to step it up. We have to be showing up at school board meetings. We have to, and that's happening, I might add, in school districts where parents that have a different view are also showing up at those meetings, raising their voices in appropriate ways. So I think that's a real thing. The other thing I'd say, in the last 5 years, the Republicans have passed 32 different bills. I have the list. If you want it, you can email me, I'll send it to you, taking away local authority from school boards, city councils, and county boards of supervisors 32 different times. And here they go again, sticking their hands into the school boards and school districts and superintendents' job of making sure, you know, that libraries have the materials they should have and that kids ought to have access to, that they know better somehow than the local leaders in our communities. And it's a real trend, and it's a real autocratic problem these people have, is they know what's best. Just ask them. And if they don't like what you're doing at the local level, by God, they're going to pass a bill to stop you from doing it.
Thank you. In the interest of time, I think we should move on to a couple of other questions from co-sponsors. So the University of Iowa Public Policy Center Social and Education Research Program, Goethe Bardoshi will be asking a question.
Hello, everyone. My name is Goethe Bardoshi. I'm a professor of counselor education at the University of Iowa, where I train master's and doctoral students to become clinical mental health counselors, school counselors, and counselor educators and supervisors. I'm here, however, representing the PPC, which funds much of my research, and where I serve as a senior research fellow. So thank you so much to the League and everyone for being here and for allowing me to talk a little bit about my research and ask a question. My research focuses on social, emotional, behavioral health interventions for improving student social skills and psychological well-being. Some of my recent studies have focused on improving the self-efficacy of first grade students that are enrolled in the Title I school, increasing the pro-social behaviors of kindergarten students enrolled in a school with high rates of free or reduced lunch and high rates of racial ethnic minority students, and improving the psychological well-being of Latinx high school students who are identified as being academically at risk. The results of my studies and so many other studies in the field are clear. Well-designed and consistent social, emotional, behavioral health interventions that are accessible to all students, but especially to our most vulnerable students, work and actually improve student SEL and psychological outcomes. That in turn promotes academic outcomes and overall positive development. The challenge, however, in continuing to promote this kind of work other than funding is the recent negative perception of social and emotional learning among some groups, as well as the larger conversation that's bubbling up across the state that questions the role of social and emotional behavioral health supports and interventions in public schools. So my question is this: how does this negative perception of SEL impact the larger legislative efforts in funding social, emotional, behavioral health? And what is your position on supporting SDBH funding and access for Iowa schools.
Okay, thank you.
Greta, I'm sorry, we have obviously a great deal of money from the ARPA funds right now for social emotional health and well-being of our students. And so there's an opportunity here to get some programs and things in place. I noticed that John Spear is on this call. He's the director for our Grantwood AEA, and they have been doing some outstanding work in terms of both getting more folks into the classrooms and into our schools who have that specialty and can assist and help with the counselors who are already in the buildings, but also developing programs where students can be peer counselors and again, help with identifying kids who are in crisis and making sure that we've got programs available. I know John could talk about the fact that they've got 24-hour response teams now that are in place if there is a student in crisis, and they can get folks out to them right away so that they do have the ability to intervene and to help them and do some prevention work. Obviously, the best prevention work is ongoing, a good teacher in the classroom who is able to do their job. And that gets back to class size and making sure that we keep those class sizes reasonable so that teachers can interact with students and be that support system for them.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to comment? Okay, moving to our last co-sponsor question. Grantwood Area Education Agency, Renee Nielsen.
Actually, I'm here for Grantwood this morning. I'm
Okay.
John Spear, Chief Administrator at Grantwood AEA. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters and our legislators for allowing us to chat today about very important educational topics. I'm going to go back to the question before Joe ended talking about local control. So my question is really this. Iowa has always prided itself in being a local control state as it pertains to education. And that has always meant up until the last 2 or 3 years that the democratically elected school board had the ability to help run the school board. And if you took exception with your school board, there's a process called a public election that will allow you to weigh in on how the district is being run. I'm very concerned about the usurping of local control by the state government as it pertains to school board members and the general climate with school boards. We already are at a very difficult time finding and electing local school board members. How do we get back to the point where your local school board really is allowed to govern the local school?
Thank you.
Well, John, thank you for that comment. In fact, we met with school superintendents yesterday. And in fact, we had one school board member that was pushing back on state legislators saying, in essence, you're not fighting hard enough. Well, everyone on this particular Zoom has some bruised knuckles. We've been in there fighting as hard as we can. My challenge is to turn it back to her. How can we get those local school boards to show up in Des Moines, school board members, and start, quite frankly, pointing fingers saying, why are you overruling our decisions? Too often I've seen school boards members from Western Iowa, actually one from Carroll, Iowa, and another from the Sac City region come and talk to me privately about what they want to see, but they weren't being very forceful with the Republican side. They didn't need to convince me. How do we get our local government, our local school boards to be their own best advocate and to start pushing the envelope a little more?
Mm-hmm.
It's a good question, John. I was just scanning the list of the 32 bills that Republicans passed since they controlled things. 5 of them take authority away from school districts and school boards. It's ironic, like this conversation about free speech. I mean, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle talk about, you know, the best government's the smallest government, closest to the people, that's local government. And time after time, they put their hand in to adjust what local government's doing to fit whatever ideological or lobby. There's been a number of things passed that you can trace the financial contributions directly to lobby groups that are trying to change the law on things like housing and preemption of certain things. So I don't have a good answer. I just think we have a very autocratic Republican General Assembly that want to supplant local decisions with their decisions, and I think we're just going to have to continue to fight this. I'm happy to again share this document. I think people would be astonished to know that 32 different bills have been passed, and we're on track this session to pass several more. So if people care about this issue of local control, there's plenty of evidence to make some arguments about why things should change.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to comment? Okay. We will now accept questions from the audience. Please enter your questions into our chat to be read by the moderator. All legislators will have the opportunity to respond to each question. Legislators each have 2 minutes to respond out of respect for all present. Please do not interrupt speakers. So we have a few, and I will start with the first one. Please address what remedies you are pushing to address the childcare shortage, including your response to the ideas of increasing adult child ratios, in parentheses, bad idea, and asking childcare assistance recipients to pay copay. Is there any traction for subsidizing early care and education, not just preschool, to ensure quality and living wage?
So in human resources, we had a presentation this week from the Department of Human Services on childcare in Iowa. One of the questions was, what have you done to increase funding for these programs? Because we know we have a childcare crisis in the state, and there is a lack of individuals to fill the slots, basically because we don't have enough providers. So we have slots available, but without the workers to provide the care, we've got an enormous problem in terms of not having the staffing and the workers again. Goes back to Dave Jacoby's comment and others about a worker shortage. I think Zach mentioned that as well. So we've got to do a much better job compensating those early childcare providers so that they will stay in the profession, treat them like a profession, give them increases. We do support wages and Teach now in every county in the state. Teach is a program that allows people to get more training, and then wages is to compensate them for that training. They did not put an additional dollar into that from state dollars. It's federal dollars that is paying for that right now. Those dollars will not go forward, and we need to have a sustainable source of funding for those programs to continue. We also are concerned because the governor's basically, she has her last dollar scholar to allow people to go to college and be able to get additional training. Childcare providers don't qualify for that because they don't make enough money. The average salary has to be at least $14 an hour. Most childcare providers don't make that. So we've got to do something to, again, allow them to take part in that so that they are also able to tap into that source of funding to get additional education. So there are some things. I was just going to comment that the childcare community has done a great job on the ratio issue and also the CCA compensation issue, because they have not brought those committee bills up right now. They had subcommittees on them, but they've gotten enough pushback from childcare providers that they have not brought those up in committee at this point. We're hoping they won't. It's really sad that the first two bills that we're doing in human resources are things that the childcare providers do not want. So we'll work on that and keep up the good work.
Thank you.
There's one thing that I would simply add to Representative Masher's comments. One of the key challenges that we know in the childcare space is that there's this mismatch between the costs that our providers are experiencing and the ability of so many families and parents to actually pay for the services that childcare providers provide. One of the ways that as a state we try to go about bridging that gap is childcare assistance, or CCA. And we've done a couple of things around CCA over the last couple of years. We've finally taken some steps to end the cliff effect, which was a really big challenge, where if you made a single dollar more, you lost your entire eligibility for CCA. But there's still a lot more that we could do with CCA. And one of the bills that we're working on over in the Senate is to expand eligibility for CCA pretty dramatically, because we know that the demand is out there, and we know that CCA is a really critical part of making this market, right, of parents who want the service and of providers who provide the service actually work. Because when you have to choose between access, quality, and cost, you kind of have to pick two, and it's up to the state to help actually make that triangle work. And so we're going to stay focused on trying to continue to expand that. As Representative Masher said, we need a long-term sustainable solution here. It's terrific that President Biden and Representative Axne were able to get the American Rescue Plan passed, which has provided some of the short-term funding that's providing emergency support. But we know that that's not a long-term or permanent or sustainable solution, and we really need state action. We'll see whether or not our Republican counterparts are able to actually get it together. I saw the comment from Megan in the chat about how the governor's child care task force made recommendations that are slightly different from what the governor is touting. And I appreciate you flagging that, Megan, because I heard from folks who were on that task force from the very beginning that they had some pretty serious concerns about the direction everything was going. So we're going to continue to talk about it and raise awareness. We know that this is a critical issue for families. We know it affects workforce. We know it affects our economy. And we know that most importantly, it affects our kids. And that's the most important thing for our future.
Thank you. Would any other?
Yeah, this is Senator Bolcom. Just briefly, all the investments that state government has made, Governor Reynolds has made, has been done with federal pandemic relief money. We've put nearly $500 million into supporting childcare providers over the last 2 years. This money is going to dry up. And one of the things that Republicans always tell us is you don't want to spend one-time money on ongoing expenses, which is essentially what we're doing with this childcare money. The governor has proposed in her budget, her brand new budget, not one new dollar of state spending, state resources to go to anything related to our childcare workforce crisis and the crisis that families face finding safe, adequate childcare for their kids, not $1. So what she has proposed is giving up $1.6 billion of state revenue in 3 or 4 years, that once this federal money runs out, the state of Iowa, we will continue to have childcare problems that need more investment, and we won't have the money. So and as you know, this federal money, the American Rescue Plan, we didn't get a single, it was Cindy Axne voted for that, and not a single other Republican in our congressional delegation voted for that. Nonetheless, the governor's handing out checks like she worked hard to raise the money, when it's very disingenuous. It's good we have the money. It's bailed out Iowa's economy and Iowa's budget, but not too far down the road, there's going to be a reckoning here.
Thank you. We have time for one more question, and since we've discussed questions about financing a little bit already, and we haven't discussed this, I'm going to ask this question. Iowa, not too long ago, was well known for its excellent education for children. The commitment to public education in this state has clearly been in decline. Some of that decline can be attributed to the rise in homeschooling. Some of the rise in homeschooling can be attributed to politics and religion. The governor can pass those paltry advances because a significant portion of voters simply don't trust public education. Is there any strategy for countering that? Democrats are always talking about how hard it is for teachers, which is absolutely true, but I rarely hear people simply advocating for quality public education.
Actually, the the fight for quality public education is the number one thing that we've been touting for about 9 or 10 years. For whatever reason, and I don't know why, the slippage, the fact that we've gone from a top state or the top state in education, and we're sliding, depending on which measurements you're using, 27th, 37th, whatever the case may be, not just in funding, but in our scores and our success rates. And those are generally happening outside of Johnson County. I don't know why, and I'm looking for input, why the public doesn't grab onto this more. If the public were to grab onto this one issue, I firmly believe we'd have a different governor right now.
Dave, this is John Spear from Grant Wood. It's interesting when you look at studies, people generally rate their own child's education very high, but public education very low. That's almost regardless of where you live. But you're right, we've never been able to marshal the vast majority of the public who really supports public education. And it's almost like they're waiting until it's too late to do it. So we do have to find a way to do that. And I will say this, I think we have the most pro-education delegation in Iowa House in our Grantwood AEA footprint. And so those of you that are fighting this battle on a daily basis, we appreciate it because you're the best lot in the state of Iowa. Unfortunately, you don't have control of the chambers right now, but we do thank you for your work.
Thank you.
I was just going to comment that we are still the top state in the nation in graduation rates from high school. And I think, again, sometimes people forget that in terms of why that happens and who helps that be a reality. It is our public school teachers. They're the ones that are providing the additional help and support, especially for our minority students. And those rates are not as high as our white population in terms of graduation rates, and we need to do something to close that gap. But we also are looking at our schools and being able to define what is the best way to address that, and how do we help our minority students so they can be successful learners. That's where, again, Dave Kirkwood comes into play, because providing them a trade or a skill before they get out of high school that they can go right into the workforce. We know there is a worker shortage. That's another way of addressing it. And obviously we have programs within this AEA, within our Kirkwood and our community college system to be able to channel students into those programs. We need to continue to do that. And we as a public need to be able to tout that and really and truly send the message to the public that our public schools are doing a great job and they are actually achieving the goals that we have set in terms of finding employability for our students. So I think, again, hats off to Brady and our teachers, hats off to our administrators who are certainly behind all of that and looking for solutions all the time to address those concerns. So again, I just can't thank the people on this call enough, whether it's at the K-12 level, community college, or our public universities. We do an amazing job, and I want you to keep up the good work and know that many of us are paying attention and care deeply about the job you're doing.
Thank you. I think we have time to slip another little question in here if people can keep their responses brief, and I think it's an important one that reflects a series of questions that have been asked in the chat. So the governor, several people are asking about the governor's return of federal funds for unemployment benefits, although she also signed a law granting unemployment benefits to those fired for not being vaccinated, and a law disallowing businesses to adopt their own mask mandates. So sometimes local control is good, but not always. What other federal assistance is being refused in terms of child support, mortgage protection, and so on? Anyone have an idea about that?
Well, we really don't know. The governor has done a lot of things secretively. First of all, addressing the unemployment issue. It's rather hypocritical that you carve out one group of people who could be on the job working, but they're not because they chose not to get a vaccination. That was their choice. And if they make that choice, I respect their choice, but I don't know that we should be pumping money into the unemployment system for someone who has a job waiting for them. There was at least 95 million returned in terms of helping schools transition and for pandemic unemployment. I suspect it's at least 5 times that much what the governor has not used and has politically just determined to send it back to the feds so it doesn't show that Democrats were working on particular projects. But the state auditor is working on this very question right now.
Thank you.
We've the Senator Bolton, the money that's come to the state, the governor is pretty much in complete discretion of Governor Reynolds. The first one, the CARES Act, she had $1.25 billion. American Rescue Plan, she has 1.4 billion and change. We've drawn down about half of that money. And sometime around July 1st, they expect to draw down another, say, $700 million. The legislature, the Republican legislature, has shown zero interest in any oversight of $1 of that spending. So the governor has had this extraordinary ability to just sprinkle money on things she thinks are important. I don't disagree with everything she's done. I think she's made a few important investments with that money. But it'd be nice to have a little bit more oversight over it. The way the Legislative Service Agency is tracking how she's spending it is based on the press releases that come out of her office. We don't even have a really good accounting week to week of kind of where we are with that spending. And just editorially, we've given several $100 million to private telephone companies to increase internet services to people that don't have them. And I'm in favor of that, but it feels like socialism to me to take money from other people and give it to these private companies. But the government getting in, and we've been charged with being socialists. Democrats have repeatedly by these folks, but when you start handing out taxpayer money to private businesses, that sure feels like socialism to me.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to comment? I think we had one kind of question of fact that maybe somebody knows the answer to in terms of how many, what percentage of Iowa voters are parents. I think it was, yes, our parents, would have kids in school. Does anybody have an idea about that?
It's my understanding it's about 20%. If you think about the population as a whole and the numbers of folks who don't have children at all, but it's about 20% of the population have children in K-12 or early childhood education.
Great, thank you. Would any other legislator like to comment? We have a couple of minutes that if there's something that you would like to return to or add.
Well, I've got a question for Mary. This is Kevin. Mary, is that down about 7 or 8% from what it was 10 years ago on the voters?
Well, I think it is on the decline, and I think we're losing a lot of our young families in Iowa. And I'm convinced it's due to some of the policies that have been put forth at the state level that are discouraging people from staying in Iowa and also coming here to work and live.
Well, thank you. Well, thanks to all of you, those with questions and those with responses, for an informative session. Thanks also to our co-sponsors, the Iowa City School District, Iowa City Education Association, American Association of University Professors, University of Iowa Public Policy Center Social and Education Research Program, and the Grant Wood Area Education Agency, and to the local television staff for recording this event and live streaming it on the League's Facebook page. Rebroadcasts of this forum will run on Iowa City Channel 4, Coral Vision, and North Liberty TV. See their respective websites for programming. Our next forum will be February 26th from 9:30 to 11 a.m. The final decision between in-person and virtual formats will be posted closer to the date on the League of Women Voters of Johnson County website and Facebook page. The focus will be environmental issues. Please join us. Thank you, everyone.